Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. It sound right, boys.
Right on, writers, and welcome first-time viewers to the Books by Adrian author platform. And this is our flagship show, Livestream Sunday. If you are new, welcome. My name is Adrian Santiago. I'll be your host today and every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, same channel. We have 13 more episodes scheduled for Season 4 of this awesome show after today, and I'm so glad that you're here for Episode 3 of Season 4. I thank each and every one of you for all of your time and support. Thank you for being here. I know there's already people in the chat. We're going to get to you real soon. Oh, actually, I'm having StreamYard issues with my chat. I know how to fix it. I'm just going to do that in a minute. Today's guest is Sara R. Stewart. We'll be chatting about BDSM, erotic fiction, and before moving into the interview segment of the episode, we'll wrap things up with a live chat Q&A at the end. Please label any questions for Ms. Stewart throughout the show with a Q so I can easily find them later on when the time comes. If you are not already, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't forget to leave a like on the stream. All of this stuff helps the channel to grow and helps us to show up in the algorithm a little more and boost everything up. So please do those things. Hit the red button. Alrighty, let's see here. There's going to be a poll going on in the chat very shortly. I'm going to throw that up soon, and once that is up, go ahead and vote throughout the episode. It's basically asking if you guys would like a Books by Adrian brand of coffee, because that's something that we're kicking around right now. All right, if you didn't make it to the live show and you're catching this on the replay, please take a moment to comment down below, telling us the sex scene that went too far for you, the one that you were like, this one was unnecessary, or some sort of, or too far can be a positive or negative experience. By the way, it can be like, oh, like they went for it, they went that. Anyway, tell us your favorite, and please sign up for my newsletter, clickable downstairs, if you'd like to vote on ways to show. If you would like to vote on ways that the show or channel can improve, or if you'd like early access to videos like my Breaking Bad commentary, please consider joining my Patreon. The link is in the description down below. Alrighty. So, and again, for those of you who don't know, I'm Adrian Santiago. I don't know why I got the jitters today, man. I don't know if it's the subject matter or what, but I got like I got jitters. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about our guest today. Sara R. Stewart is the author behind the Portland Lovers series of romance novels. She's a member of the BDSM community and has worked hard on transitioning from an aspiring writer to published novelist. She is in the midst right now of a real-life crazy mystery today, and that I'm just itching to write about. I want to steal her story and write about it because it's that juicy. I'm not going to do that. It's just a desire that you get as a writer. Sometimes it's like, oh, I wish I could tell that story. Okay. Please help me to welcome our guest, Sara Stewart, to the show. Sara?
So much for having me, Adrian. It
Hey,
is
welcome,
so nice
welcome.
to be here. And
it is my pleasure to have you. My
It's my
pleasure.
first live interview, so you'll have to bear with me a little bit. I'm a little
That's
nervous myself.
that's the second one this season. Last episode was a first timer as well. His first time doing any kind of video interview at all, and so it went really well. So
Excellent to hear.
you're in good hands. I try to make things as easy for the guest as possible. All you got to do is show up and answer questions. You're gonna be fine.
Hey, well, you're in luck. I like to talk.
Well, we're going to talk. We're going to get into it, man. We're going to get into it. Let's go ahead and give you the floor for a second, though. And please let my audience know who you are, where you're from, and what you're working on these days.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I Sarah Stewart. Use my middle initial because otherwise you can't find me on Amazon or
It
online.
was
There's a
quite a
lot of us.
challenge. Yeah.
There's a lot of us, so so that's why I use it, and I don't. Um, uh, I think it's easier to find me on Amazon than it is to find my books, to be quite honest. So I write adventures in love and erotica, BDSM, erotic romance, at least to start with. You can find my website and all of my important links, including links to some of my books, in the information below. I think Adrian is posting for me. Thank you so much. So I
My
grew up on a
pleasure.
houseboat in Sausalito, which is just outside of San Francisco. My parents were hippies. And then I ended up starting my career in San Francisco working in the business travel industry. And I've been with my company and in business travel for 22 years now, which is kind of unheard of for people in our generation. Well, Gen Xers. Normally, we tend to be a lot more mobile in careers and jobs than the boomers were. Um, I live in East Berkshire with my partner and my 7-year-old daughter. My oldest daughter, who's 18, is living on her own now. And before kids, I used to really love to go dancing and rock climbing, but now I write and I work and I write and I work, and that's what I do. Nope, we lost you there for a minute.
Sorry, I'm notorious for muting myself and then forgetting. Um, I was just saying, what a spread there for your two children from, what is it, 18 and 7?
Yeah, 11 years apart. Quite a big
That was
age difference.
that was bold. That was a bold choice. Yeah, we tried to get both of ours out like as quick as possible. We got the first one out, and then by the time he was 4, he had a brother, and we're like, all right, let's close up shop. We're done.
Gross parenting time cut down significantly when you do it that way.
Yeah, yeah, because like, and then especially we were waiting for our oldest, our first, to get old enough that he could actually help out. You know what I mean? Like, like by the time he's 4, going on 5, you know, it's like okay, like you can look after your brother a little bit, make sure he's not hurting himself while we're somewhere else doing something else, etc., etc.
Is that
Well,
working out for you?
so far so good. So far so
Good.
good. You know, we'll see. We'll see. We have two. We're lucky enough to have two very well behaved kids. So for the most part, our youngest is almost 3, but right now he's in that exploratory phase where he's testing his boundaries and like seeing what he can get away with. And he's the cutest little guy in the world. So he rules the house like he has
Of
everyone wrapped
course.
around his finger. It's incredibly annoying. I just I don't know what to do with him. He's a problem. But you know, mostly well behaved. Um, I'm sorry for the tangent. I want to say welcome to everybody in the chat. Thank you for being here. Thanks for letting me know things. Guys, I'm sorry, man. I don't know when I'm going to figure it out. Hey, Gary's here. Gary, welcome. We haven't seen you around these parts in a while. He's a former Livestream Sunday alumni, as is Mr. Stevenson here. Richard Holiday, welcome, welcome. Came as soon as I could. Like it was an urgent emergency. I came as soon as I could. All right. So let's see here. I wanted to throw up real quick before we get into the topic of the day. I wanted to throw up today's comment of the day, or this week comment of the week. And that's coming from Novel Nana. This was on the episode of the podcast where T.E. Butcher and I were talking about wars and fictional wars and stuff like that. And she's saying that she loved the Lord of the Rings battle at Helm's Deep. well, really all the battles. And then that led to like a whole like conversation that went on for a little while about the best, like battle sequences in fiction, from Helm's Deep to Battle of Blackwater Bay in Game of Thrones. And then like some of the ones in the movies, from Fury and Saving Private Ryan and all that stuff. It was awesome. So sometimes the comment of the day is because you lead to a conversation. So Novel Nana, awesome, awesome. Jennifer Brown, welcome, welcome. Yep, yep. Parents in the house, nephew, aunts, uncle. Yep, children everywhere. Especially, there's a lot of COVID, era children out there too. Like, people just got bored
Oh
in
boy,
quarantine.
we should really pay those teachers more after a year with our kids, maybe more. It makes you appreciate them.
So we're gonna go ahead and dive into the topic here, and where is it? Here it is. Sarah, while doing research for today's episode, I made the brilliant choice of typing BDSM, just simply BDSM, into the search bar in Google. The images are now burned into the backs of my eyes forever. What was your way into this world? How does one like step foot into it? Dip their toe, so to speak. Because I imagine that it's quite an awkward conversation to have with people to begin with, and so like I'm wondering how one like how do you get there?
It's a fair question. It's a good question. And I was chuckling because Adrian had shared that with me already. It's just a
Oh yeah,
funny
everybody
thing
knows
to
I do
do.
an outline. Yeah.
Um, so for me, I think that a lot of my interests, I didn't know what I was interested in, what it was called. Um, it's a pretty personal question too,
Yeah.
but
Sorry.
so I think I dabbled a bit in my own sex life and found there were certain things that I particularly appreciated, and so that led me into getting more interested in pursuing that. And what was um, I think putting labels to it was a big step for me. But once I did, learning more about the culture itself and why people are interested in being a part of the BDSM scene, and it's different for lots of people, um, was helpful for me. Being an adult survivor of abuse and trauma, it is also very safe, cathartic space to work through issues that happened in my childhood. So,
Sure.
I think that's pretty common of the scene, but not exclusively. I think people seem to think that individuals go into BDSM with um, a certain type of background only, and that's not necessarily true. There are people interested in BDSM and involved in the scene who aren't from a trauma or bad childhood experience. So it's a gamut.
That was going to be my next question, was like some of the
Mhm.
misconceptions about the culture, you know what I mean? Because I know that to be true about most things. I remember a time when, you know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe was not a thing yet, and, geek culture was niche, and people were, called geeks and nerds as an insult, and now it just seems like nerds are just enjoying the spoils and of taking over the world. So it's
Yes,
just
we
one of
are.
those things where like once you take a look on the other side, you realize, oh, it's not quite as strange as I thought it was. I was putting them down for liking Spider-Man. Spider-Man's actually really cool. So I get, that's exactly why I was asking for like the misconceptions, those things that just are like, what?
I think that in people's fantasies, things are a lot sexier than the reality. And I think in people's fear, things are a lot more off-putting than they
Mm.
really are. So, i- and there's lots of different ways to be a part of the BDSM culture too.
The geek selling head here.
That's fun.
I got people hitting on me. Great. I knew that this was going to be a consequence of this episode. That's fine. I've made my peace with it. I
Beards are
will say,
in.
yeah. I think it's I think it's the curls they like. You know,
Mm.
they're fans. Um, Richard and Adam are mostly just probably just pulling my leg here.
Mm.
Folks in the chat, I just want to give you guys a heads up that I'm looking at it on YouTube and I'm looking at it on StreamYard, and there's a huge lag between the two. So I apologize if your comments are not um, are, are not hitting quite on time as far as hitting the screen, but I am seeing them eventually. I would like to say label any questions for Miss Stewart with a Q so that I can find those questions later in the live chat portion of the show. So label that with a Q. I'll leave that up for a little while to stir your brains. All right, Miss Stewart, I think we're going to dive right on into the interview. I think that's
Okay.
a good idea. All right, let's do it. Here we go. It always cuts out right after the beat drops. I'm always like vibing, and then it's like, oh. All right. So, how long were you an aspiring writer before the turn to published professional?
Oh, well, I started wanting to do it and writing at 12. So I'm 45, 33 years. But no, I published my first novel a couple of years ago. So about, 30 years. But only seriously getting to the business of it in the last three.
Yeah.
I did
So,
go to college to write, though.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. See, I never went to school for it. I just always dabbled with it here and there until I finally decided, okay, let me do this thing. And then my sister went to school for it, and ever since leaving school for it, she's just been doing other things. She hasn't been doing this. So it's interesting how like it kind of diverges that way, isn't it? We've got some questions coming in the chat. I'm happy to see that. Keep them coming, guys. All right. Well, do you have any works from that time, like before your before you started putting in the work to do it professionally, that you'd like to return to and finish, maybe?
Yeah, so in college, my thesis was an autobiography.
Mm.
As I previously mentioned, I had a pretty rough childhood and pretty unique to growing up in the Sausalito waterfront. It's a culture, anchor out community, lots of interesting characters, and I very much wanted to write about my story. And I did. I got um, about 30 pages in, and we're talking 8.5 by 11. So probably if you're looking at novel pages, we're probably about, 70 or so pages into writing a book, which I was planning on finishing the year after I graduated college before going back and getting an MFA, which I did not do. But I plan on getting back to it one of these days. I think I just needed some perspective that age
Mm.
brings to make it a quality piece of work. I didn't have a whole lot of life experience in my early 20s. So I'm glad I waited because I think it'll be a much better story.
Yeah, I, 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 my journey was very much the same. You know what I mean? Where
Mhm.
once you make that turn where you're like, I'm gonna do this professionally, and you look back on it and you're like, why didn't I start this sooner? What was I doing? You know what I mean? Like, but at the same time, you knew if you had started back then, it just you weren't going to produce what you could be producing now because you, as you say, you didn't have as much life experience. I was a
Yeah.
baby in my 20s. I thought I was a man. I was a baby in my 20s. I look back on my 20s now with a lot of regret, to be honest with you, because I'm just like, so much wasted time and potential.
And I'm watching my 18-year-old daughter start her life, and
About
she's
to enter
considering all
those
these
20s.
serious decisions, and I'm just like, "Oh my god, please wait."
I
But
I
but
I work at a hotel,
you
and
have to learn from your mistakes.
oh yeah, yeah. I work in a hotel and I check in parents. I work at a hotel in a college town. So I check in parents all the time who are moving their kids into college, letting them go for the first time, stuff like that. And I'm always like, how are you not a wreck right now? Like, how are you not just like a puddle right now? Because I would be. I mean, I am just thinking about it. They're like, you just gotta let go, man. I'm like, dude, I can't imagine. I cannot imagine.
Yeah, my daughter though, she's pretty incredible, and I think she's got a decent head on her shoulders. So I'm just hoping and praying that she takes things slowly and makes sure they are what she wants before she proceeds.
We
But
hope for the best for our kids.
yes,
just
can't
just
do
the
it for
best.
them.
Just please make the right choices. But it's all right. We all figure it out eventually. What helped you to finally turn that corner and really transition into somebody who finishes their books and publishes them and puts them out? What was, do you think, the crystallizing moment or turn in your life?
There were two main contributors. First, I have to credit my husband. He knew I wanted to write. And so one year he bought me, I've always just worked from home and never really had a personal computer. He bought me a bought me a laptop to start writing on. And then the next year for my birthday, he sent me to a romance author reader convention. He bought me the tickets and the hotel and he got me there. And when I got there, I was like, oh, these are my people. And I spent
Yeah.
the whole weekend asking authors how to make that crossover into finishing and publishing. And I never looked back.
I uh, I for a long time was looking for this book called "The War of Art" by Stephen Pressfield, and I was having a hard time finding a print copy of it for a long time, and it's an audiobook now that you can watch on YouTube, and so I've been reading that book, and it's crazy how like I consider, up until reading this book, I considered myself to have made that turn into the professional, right? And I'm
Yes.
listening to that book and what a professional is, and I'm going, as much as I'm doing, I haven't made that turn yet. I still gotta like really really dive into this thing. So we're gonna see how this affects me going forward. But that's what I'm looking for. You know what I'm saying? Like that turning point, that moment where you're like, I'm no longer an amateur. I'm a professional.
Oh, you just have to tell yourself it's so and that it
Yeah.
is. Believe it.
There you
Believe in
go.
yourself.
So pitch us the Portland Lovers series.
Oh, okay. I had to make some notes on this because no one's ever asked me to do that before.
You're welcome to use your notes.
Um, so it's called the Portland Lover series because my books all are set in Portland, Oregon, where I lived for 14 years. And each novel is a standalone romance. However, the characters from the other novels, they all interact
Gotcha.
and in fun ways, and I'll just put it that way. Um, and there's a lot of kinky BDSM sex, but there is also a lot of romance and character development. And for me, I really feel like I don't hit my readers over the head with the sex as much as I really want them to be invested in the romance and the characters. However, there's a fair amount of sex in it, I'll be quite honest. And it is contemporary romance because the sex is not the center of the story. I call it erotic romance because it's got a lot of illicit sex in it. But I'll be honest, it more fits the contemporary category. And in terms of the stories themselves, what makes them different, I think, from other romances, forgive all the is because uh
I've
how do
been
I want
doing
to
this
put
for a
this?
couple years and I still do
I
ums. Don't
it's
worry
hard
about
to
the
get it
ums.
out. Is the female characters are not the traditional simmering flower that, the maiden that needs to be rescued. And even
Right.
in a BDSM scene, I mean, I think a lot of romance readers are invested in a certain perception of what BDSM is, especially given a lot of the recent novels that have come out portraying them as such. But the BDSM community centers in one core principle that everyone has to adhere to, which is consent, right? And being a sub or a dom does not make you submissive or dominant in everyday life. The characters are strong women, powerful women, and who also like kinky sex.
Yeah. See, what's interesting about the that genre to
Mhm,
me is, and by that genre I just mean like the erotic romance genre in general, not specifically
mhm.
BDSM, but excuse me. You felt the need to specify that that you're not beating people over the head with the sex, but there is a lot of sex in it, and I feel like that's something that everyone says about their book, depending on what genre they're in. It's like it's an action one, but I don't beat you over the head with the action. And what I mean to say by that is that
Mhm,
the goal always, regardless of the genre that you're in, right? The goal
mhm.
is always is to tell good story through character,
Yeah.
and the stuff that makes it a genre is the window dressing around that, right? Like, if it's a sci-fi thing, then you've got your technology and your aliens or whatever it is. If it's fantasy, you got your wizards, but it's always a story about characters, and so it should always be in service of the story, in service of the characters. And so I always find that really interesting about that genre in particular, that's actually a complaint that a lot of people will have about certain books, like, oh, it was just gratuitous sex, it didn't matter to the story. I always look for the stuff that matters to the story. And to your point with your female characters, one of my favorite sex scenes of all time, I bring it up all the time. I've brought it up on this show before. One of my favorite sex scenes in a novel of all time is in Dance with Dragons, the fifth book in A Song of Ice and Fire, and it's with Asha Greyjoy, uh, Theon's sister.
Feel like I should be writing this down.
It's a really good one. It's a really good
I
one.
gotta look it up.
She's a pirate, right? And so and she's
I
the
like it.
captain of her ship. And as a female captain, she has to be even harder than most men. You know what I mean? She has to keep a crew of men in line. So she can never ever show any weakness. She always has to be the toughest one around. And so we're with her on the deck and she's doing her tough stuff, and you've never ever seen her in a private setting. And when she goes back to her quarters and is in private, she is seemingly accosted by someone. A man like rushes her and is seemingly sexually assaulting her. But then you realize that it's actually consensual. She's playing along, and you realize this is her boyfriend, and he's the only person that she can ever pretend to be vulnerable with. And so this is their kink. And it was one of the best examples to me of how to reveal character through a sex scene, where, like, now we understand her and why she is the way she is with everyone else, and why she is the way she is with this person and this person only. It was just a really incredibly well crafted sex scene, in my opinion. So I always point to that one as a good example, and that's kind of like what I'm looking for when I'm reading these genres.
Yeah, it's funny. I was sitting with another author who writes BDSM romance and who is in the scene, and does their and her and a partner's interaction with the scene differently than I do. I'm more of a dabbler; they're a full timer, and I was trying to describe something. I forget we're talking about BDSM, and her husband put it perfectly. He said, "It's about getting you to quiet your mind." And it was for me, it was like, "Aha! I've never been able to like exactly communicate it, but that's one of my favorite things about the BDSM scene in general is that we all have so much going on in our mind and so many stressors in our life and kids and we've got to take the dog out and whatever it is, right?
Right.
And having those intimate moments and being able to shut all of that down and just feel it, some of us need a little extra to get there.
Yeah, yeah. To honestly like not think about anything and just
Yeah,
have this like euphoric moment to yourself. Yeah.
exactly.
I yeah, I get it. I get it. All right, what are my questions? With 3 books in the series so far, can
Mhm.
we expect any more in this, or is it the trilogy done? If it's over, what's next?
Great question. So, I do have more books planned. I actually have already finished book 4, and I'm
Nice.
working on edits right now. I'm hoping to get it out in the spring. And I'm working on writing book 5. So my intention is I think there's going to be 6, possibly 7 in the series. And then there's going to be 1 or 2 wedding books because the romance genre, it always readers want to know what happens next, right? So the wedding books are pretty popular.
Nice.
Or if they're not going to get married, the what happens next books. But then I do plan. I've actually started something in a different. It's still romance, but it's a different category. So these are BDSM. So it's all about consent. I'm also working on what's called a bully romance, and or dark romance. And so these are stories where it's dubious consent, I'll put it that way,
Mm,
and tends to be a little bit darker. It's certainly not for everyone. Many dark romances actually include rape in them. I'm not necessarily a fan of that,
yeah.
but a lot of people are, and that's their kink. And I don't want to shame that in any way because that's fine. It's just fiction. Um,
I remember it always comes to mind is a joke by Louis C.K. where he was talking about after a show he went home with a woman and they were trying to get started being intimate and she kept stopping him, and but they were making out, so he kept making out, and then he would try again and she would stop him again, and it happened like 3 times and he just stopped trying, and
mhm.
then nothing happened and they just parted ways. And then the next night she was at the club again and asked him why they didn't have sex the night before, and he's like, well, because you didn't want to. And she said, yes, I did, I was really into it. And he said, well, why did you keep stopping me? And she says, because I wanted you to just go for it. And he said, well, you should have told me. I would have happily done that for you. And she
Yeah,
says,
that's
no,
not that's not cool
exactly.
at
That's
all.
not cool at all because and then she's like,
No.
no, it has to feel real and dangerous. He's like, are you out of your fucking mind?
Yeah,
I'm not just
so
going to take
I'm
that chance.
yeah,
Yeah, no.
no.
So that's the dangers of that particular kink, isn't it?
Yeah, you
It's,
have to. So, and actually, my friend gave me, there's a name for that. It's called, oh gosh. Well, there's a name for people who can pretend rape is their thing,
yeah.
but it's not.
I don't know
It's
the
all
term
agreed
either.
upon in advance and negotiated.
I
Consent,
hope
non-consent.
I hope there's like
CNC.
written
Consent,
contracts
non-consent.
with like with like signed in blood. Like it needs to be ironclad, man, because that's bananas.
Well,
Okay.
people have to have a safe word for that kind of
Oh,
play.
at least, at the very least, a safe word, but ideally lawyers involved. Let's see. So with let me see here. Actually, I was going to ask you what sort of sets your books apart from others, but we've actually been touching on that along the way, haven't we? So now you have mentioned that BDSM plays a role in your novels, but so do other kinks and other kinds of situations. So they're not you are they labeled basically BDSM erotic novels, or are they just generally erotic novels and people can go there for the general context, or is it more specifically geared towards BDSM?
Um, so there, So I'll go off what my reviews and my readers tell me, which
Okay.
is I write, I apparently write
That's funny.
slow burn BDSM erotic romance. So, what does that say? Need a good safe word as long as you don't forget the safe word. No, you don't want to pick something you're going to forget.
See, I'm you know, a lawyer in the room in the corner with like a stenographer. I need a stenographer in there, like you know, like
That sounds like male fear of going to jail to me, and that does not sound consensual to me.
hey man, like these days you gotta protect yourself. Is all I'm saying. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Um,
You said how
so
you forget it easily.
I think that honestly, my
Oh,
stories are about strong women who are, you know, probably all authors will say various aspects of either things that interest me or my personality or, experiences from my life or not. My first book, which was the first book I've ever written or published, the main character aged out of the foster system, and so she had some serious emotional issues that were unresolved that she had to work through. And
yikes!
actually, I write some of her therapy scenes, and I worked with a therapist to make sure that they were legitimately
See that
realistic
that's what
because that
that
was important to me.
that's awesome. That's awesome. That's an awesome piece of the puzzle of your books. You know what I mean? Knowing that there's like legitimate care taken into the psychology of it all. That's fantastic. That's awesome.
And
Um, I, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask, actually, in line with that, what are some of the cliches and general pitfalls of your genre that you know you try to stay away from yourself? You know.
well, I'll be honest. I wanted to write. I never really admitted it out loud because there's so much like snootiness around writing in the romance genre. A lot of authors who don't write in romance look down as it as like pulp fiction. It's not valuable literature. And you know what? It's you gotta be willing to laugh at yourself. You're writing fantasies and sexual fantasies. But I think the biggest thing that really kept me from writing is for so long, what was in romance novels was controlled by the major publishing houses, namely Harlequin. So Harlequin had a very specific formula you had to fit into. Literally, there is a script that you have to meet in terms of, you know, how many what type of conflict. The women couldn't be too strong or intelligent, and also the authors oftentimes were given a pen name when starting with Harlequin, but if they decided to stop writing for Harlequin and go out on their own, Harlequin for many years owned their pen name. So they couldn't even take the notoriety they had from their
Wow.
initial stories into their own career because Harlequin owned their pen names. And now we've got, only a few publishing houses left that are big, and they do control a lot of the canon in terms of what is approved and acceptable. I didn't start getting serious about writing romance until I started reading and really loving some of the independently published authors out there that are writing really intelligent characters. One of my favorite authors, in fact, Penny Reed, she is a total scientist and super smart. And literally, one of her main female protagonists is like in these global think tanks. She's so intelligent that, people can't even really talk to her because she's got so much of her time is invested in solving these big, world problems, and she's super smart. And I think that a lot of these publishing houses had the opinion that women didn't want to read
Mm.
about, or they weren't smart enough to read about that and read strong women and I think it was the publishers didn't want women to be portrayed as smart. I don't know.
You know, for I think that just as many publishers who look down on the romance genre, there's just as many that look down on horror, for example.
Yeah.
Like, there's just
Hmm.
all this kind of like uh, uh, this like genre segregation thing that they're trying to do. It doesn't make any sense. It's one of the many reasons why I prefer the idea of going self-published over traditional published.
Independently published.
Yeah, yeah.
People
So
don't take you as seriously if you say you're self-published, believe it or not.
independently published.
Yes.
Good
There's a
note.
lot.
Good
Yeah.
note. I'll take that. I'll take that to heart. Uh, Jeez, man, it's crazy, man. How like something as simple as using the wrong term for your profession can get you like dismissed from from consideration. It's bananas. Uh, let's see here. Oh, what is this was a question I was really looking forward to. What's a trope of the romance genre that your books do justice to? I want to specify that there's a difference between a trope and a cliche. A trope is a good thing, the thing that people enjoy, but one that yours does particular good justice to.
I'll give you some example tropes that I don't write in, and then I'll tell
Okay,
you the ones I do. So,
take me through it.
one that always makes me laugh is secret baby,
Secret
or
baby.
secret baby is a romance trope. And then there is, a lot. But I so of my series, the first three are billionaire romances, and that is a trope. And it is what it is. It kind of worked out that way. But also I have opposites attract. I have enemies to lovers. I have office romance. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of enemies to lovers. When they figure out like, oh, we're fighting for no reason.
Are
Let's
fighting
boogie.
because of the sexual chemistry.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
conflict.
Too strong, too strong. Uh, what walk us through? I wanted to get to this before we turn to the live chat questions because they're gonna have more after this.
Oh yeah.
Walk us through the great mystery of your life as you describe it. I understand you had extended family, or that you knew that you had extended family, but how did you find out about it all? Walk us through it.
Yeah, this is a fun one. So my whole life, I grew up hearing my dad talk about how he'd had a first marriage because he's considerably older than my mom, and children. And so I always wanted to meet. He said he had a son and daughter, and I always wanted to meet them. And I searched in lots of different ways. This is before internet really was like easy to find stuff, and then it with the internet and through ancestry.com. And finally, even though my conspiracy theory brain really fought against me doing that whole DNA test, I did it. Even though I know they're using the DNA in all kinds of interesting ways now,
Oh yeah, now they've
but
got
at
a
least they
clone of
ask your
you. Yeah,
permission.
yeah.
They ask your permission now if they can use your DNA in medical research, so that's good. Um,
Okay.
s- and I was expecting maybe I'd find my brother and sister, but what I didn't expect was finding out about a brother that I didn't know existed. So my um I I was connected with a gentleman named Thomas Jenkins, and it said we were cousins. And he reached out and says, "Hey, I think it said we're cousins. I think we might have had the same grandfather." And he started talking about my father, and I said, "Well, that's not my grandfather, that's my father. I think your father is my brother." And so at first I was thinking this was the brother I've been looking for forever, but he had the wrong name. His name um, was George, and I probably shouldn't have said names. Gosh darn it.
Oh, it's
I
okay.
I filter. It needs to
Uh,
click on. So anyways, I found out that my dad, while he was married and had this first family, I guess there was a break for a while, and then he was involved with this other woman where he knocked her up. And then she said I was that she'd had the kid later when she ran into him and offered that he met meet her son, and my dad didn't want my dad's a piece of shit, sorry. Didn't want anything to do with him. And so they went on their merry way. He had a great stepfather. He had I think a great childhood, and seems like he's been a good father. And I'm getting to know my brother, and it's so exciting. And the weirdest part about the whole thing is we look alike. And so I've never looked like anybody really in my family except my mom and my dad, and mostly my dad. My dad's an only child, and now I have this half brother and two
That's wild.
nephews and four great nieces and nephews. And
Yeah.
it's super.
It's instant family, right? Like just a
Well,
giant branch that you didn't have any idea of. That's so bananas.
I think it's I mean, yeah, we're siblings, but it's hard to have that feeling when you weren't
Oh,
raised
sure.
that way. So I think
Yeah.
we're becoming friends and getting to know each other, and I'm so grateful. I As an only child, I've never had that familial connection, so it's nice.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I wanted to go ahead and jump into the live chat questions before we run out of time.
Mhm.
But man, I was looking forward to hearing about that because as soon as I heard that that was going on, I was like, wait a minute, what? A whole
Well,
other
there's more
branch of
to
your
the
family?
story I'll have to
I'm sure
tell
there
you
is.
about after the fact, because now I have apparently 4 other siblings out there to look forward to meeting.
Oh, so we'll probably get to that in the podcast then. You know, the things we didn't get to in here. Let's jump into this. Hang on. Get it? I showed you mine.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did. It was funny. Very witty.
How many shades of gray really are there, and how
Ugh.
has that book
Somebody always
impacted
has to bring
the
up the book.
erotic? Oh, I knew it was going to be Richard. I knew way before this started that it was going to be Richard. And how has that book impacted the erotic romance market, in your opinion? It's become almost a stereotype. Question mark.
It has. I think she was really so. The interesting thing about how that story came to be is E.L. James was writing fan fiction. Twilight fan fiction is where the story came from.
Yeah.
And and I'm a big fan fiction fan, so especially if you're a Veronica Mars fan fiction. But she wrote about something in the best way she did, and it's a great story, but it is not BDSM. And she didn't have enough information about the community, and she's gotten a lot of negativity from the community, but and rightfully so, because she portrayed herself as something. She portrayed the story as something that it wasn't. And consent is central to the scene, and that was the problem with her
Yeah.
story. But having said that, what she's done is um, I want to say that she introduced a bunch of women, moms, people to a community that maybe they weren't aware of before, because BDSM romance has existed for a while, but that book just hit at the right time, and the story was what it was. And so I think it brought it to mainstream, and therefore a lot more people are talking about it and thinking about it and wanting to read about it. The good side is that there's more of an audience because people are learning about and getting interested in, and it's not so shamed. The bad side of it is that many people are writing without the complete understanding of what it should be, and maybe some of the expectations and safety that might come out of being a part of the scene when, you know, trying things out at home might potentially be damaging.
You know, it's interesting how like so many different cultures are portrayed in literature, incorrectly. You know, the way that you talk about the way that BDSM has been portrayed thus far, just reminds me of how people talk, for example, of how like samurai culture has been portrayed in literature and movies and TV thus far, and how off it is, or ninjas, for example, which are like the biggest like Americanized version of what they really were. Like they're not the same thing at all. So that's what I'm hearing. You know what I mean? That sort of like once you actually look into it, you find out that you've been looking at
Misled a
incorrect
little.
information. Yeah,
Yeah.
you've been misled. You've been absolutely misinformed thus far. What is the best way to write a descriptive, passionate kiss? Adam with the questions.
You got to be in the moment.
Ooh,
So for me, when I'm writing about passion and sex, I'm fully invested in the story. I don't just pick up and write a sex scene cold. I have to get there with reading it and getting to that place of understanding what the characters are feeling and put myself in the scene. And so I think all we can do is do our best from our own perspectives. So I write from my perspective of what is good and enjoyable, and it might not be for everybody.
yeah. Well, I feel like good advice for any kissing scene, sex scene, whatever, is usually the same writing advice for writing in general, right? Like get into your senses, get into your sights and your smells and your tastes and your touches, and like figure out all what is going on in that realm for your character, and portray that. All right, romance fiction sells well, but it's looked down upon a lot, especially when it comes to erotica. What would you say to that series? Like we did. This is probably from a little earlier. We did kind of talk a little bit about that, but any other thoughts that you have on the matter?
Yeah, so I want to make a distinction. There's erotica, and then there's erotic romance, and they are by far not the same thing. So erotica is writing sex for the sake of the sex, and the sex is the story. Romantic erotic romance is just really, really steamy romance that has the doors open to the bedroom and you get to participate in the sex by reading about it. Um, so it's important to make that distinction, because if you go into buying a book called erotica, you're not going to get a romance.
Right.
And if you go into looking for a romance, there's a ton. I mean, you can get Amish romance, you can get Christian romance, you can get sweet. And when it's sweet, there is
Amish
no opening
romance
to the
is
bedroom
interesting.
door. Yeah. It's a huge, actually, a huge, uh, um, what am I
Subgenre.
saying? Well, I was going to say there's a huge readership of that, which blows me away.
That's so funny, man.
But
There's somebody for everything. I'll tell you what. Like
mhm.
somebody's gonna read it. When writing a lover sex scene, do you listen to music to set the mood in your mind? I think he means your mind. For me, Who Wants to Live Forever by Queen is a personal favorite.
Are you talking about writing romance or having sex? Because that's a little
I,
different.
yeah, like, I think he's talking about writing
There's
it. Yeah,
different
yeah. When
moods.
writing a love
Um,
scene.
so so I've just learned.
That's funny. Uh-oh. I think you're cutting out on your Wi-Fi. Either you are or I am. I think it's you. All right, let's give her a second to jot back in here. Let's see. All right, while we're waiting for her Wi-Fi to clear up, let's throw up the results of the poll for today. Wow. Really, guys?
I'm back.
Hey! I I riffed while you were paused there.
Good.
The results of my poll: Would you buy books by Adrian Brand Coffee? Mostly no's. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot.
What I was
There goes
just
that
saying.
dream.
There you go.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I love coffee though. Um, I have to, in order to be able to get a thought out and to write and create, I can't have a lot of distractions. So I don't have any noise
Same.
going on. When I'm writing, occasionally my kid will be in the same room with her headphones on and she'll be on her little iPad. But for the most part, when I'm writing, I have to be alone and focused on what I'm doing because even talking to someone with noise in the room, I can't pay attention. So,
See, I usually throw on some sort of like focused music, which is usually just like rhythmic tones. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have a real beat. It doesn't. It certainly doesn't have any lyrics. I can't have anything with lyrics to it. Like
yeah.
it'll distract me from what I'm writing. But something to just drown everything else out and to just kind of almost white noisy. You know,
Mm.
that's where I'm at. Um, Sarah, this has been awesome. We have about 5 minutes left in the show. We're going to start wrapping it up soon. Was there any part of the well? Actually, let's go back into we do have a couple minutes. Let's go back into the questions. We're going to have quite a few for the podcast, which is nice. Let's see here. Oh, so with everything that was going on with your family and the mystery behind the new branches and everything, I wanted to ask if that brought any story ideas, even if it's not like actually that story, but if it brought any story ideas or if it led you anywhere creatively in your writing.
I want to say yes, but I'll be honest, I'm what's called a pantster. I don't ever know what I'm going to write until it comes out of me. And
Oh
so,
boy,
and yeah, I sit
terrifying.
down. No, I sit down and my characters tell me what's going to happen. And I think something's always kind of going off in my subconscious. But yeah, I'm not a plotter. I'm trying to be more plotty, but it's not me.
See, I'm a plotter who allows room for pantsing when I'm writing. But even if I come up with something new on the fly when I'm writing today's chapter, by the time I'm done, I'm going back to my outline and I'm adjusting everything so that it'll fit in there, but it doesn't throw off my game. You know, I got to keep my game plan going. So it's
But you
I'm a
write
plotter in
such a
that sense.
different genre. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
with all that's going on in those types of stories, you
You
really have
know,
to plot. I could never write mystery because you have to be like so you have to know where it's going.
yeah. Yeah,
I
mine
couldn't.
is a murder mystery, and as I'm like dropping clues, you have to like, well, is it too early for this clue? Is this going to give it away? You don't want to give too much. You want, oh, like what if this is going to lead them this way? It's not easy. But you touched on something that it never occurred to me that the idea of romance novels uh, lend themselves probably a lot better to pantsers than any other genre because of the whole idea of going with the flow and what the characters' vibes are and what what where their chemistry's at. Like the that's going to dictate the entire rhythm of the story. Because it's a romance, right? So like it's all about the chemistry between the characters. That's actually really interesting.
I think you could do that in some other genres too. I mean, we all still have to go back and make sure there aren't any plot holes and fix things in editing, right? But I think with certain genres, it's probably a lot harder. Yeah.
I feel like plotting helps the editing phase, makes it a little easier. I'm terrified of pantsing a story and then having to edit it. I'm just like, no, that's too much work. It's too much. I can't do it. All right. Well, Miss Stewart, this has been fantastic. I'm going to give you the floor one last time to remind the folks at home what you have coming up. If you have a book coming out soon, anything like that, now's the time to let them know about it. Your links are down below for them to find you. Tell the people what you got going on.
I'd love it. I mean, I don't know if your audience are romance readers, but I recently came out with a book called Bound by Pride, and it's by far the most erotic and sexy book I have written to date, and I'd really love for you to check it out if you go to my website, which is just my name, sararstewart.com. No period. You will you'll be able to get to the my buy links, but I have also looking at this year doing an audiobook, so keep keep me in
Nice.
mind.
Nice. All right. Thank you very, very much for being with us today. To everybody in the chat, thank you so much for coming out. That's going to be it for us. We're going to head on out. Ms. Stewart, please stick around, and we'll just dismiss each other properly. Everybody else, like, comment, subscribe, do all those things. Thank you for crushing my dreams of my own coffee. I appreciate the keeping me real. You know what I mean? Keeping me tethered to the ground so I'm not lost in the clouds. I appreciate that. Thanks for looking out, guys. All right, here we go. We're going to be out right on Writers. Till next time.
Bye.